Hello, and we're back with our guest, Christian Cegavske. And also to my left on my screen is Brian Pike, who is joining us from down under to ask some questions. And frankly, I'll probably let Brian do most of the talking. Christian, for most of you, is going to be familiar from Blood Tea and Red String, which is one of our 366 canonical weird movies. And it's really a thrill to be able to have her here today after she's finished teaching a course on animation earlier today. To start off, I think probably most people, if they're tuning into this, have seen Blood Tea and Red String. If they haven't, though, how would you describe it to a new viewer?
It is considered by some a surrealist fable created for adults. Generally, I aimed it at an adult audience with it being safe for most children. It's always better when other people describe.
It is it's
I'm too
difficult.
close to the subject, and I don't have my one-liner. But I could read. Oh,
let's go around, and I'll give my how I would pitch it, and Brian can do what he would do. It's a stop motion, first of all, very sort of tactile with a lot of doll characters in it, and it's a fairy tale, and it is, I would say, it's definitely got a surrealist take, and it's dark, and it's about little forest creatures in some sort of imaginary forest, and there are basically two bands. There are mice, who are sort of the villains of the piece, and these creatures called dwellers under the tree. And the dwellers under the tree make a doll and give it to the mice as a present, but the mice keep it and do some nasty things.
I'm making it sound yeah.
And there is also a little birthed creature from the doll. I think a substitute possibly for yourself, Christiane.
In some ways, yeah. It's definitely not autobiographical, but there's definitely autobiographical elements, deeply steeped in symbolism and diversion.
Another thing, so in very early comments that you've made years ago on the DVD commentary, I think you discussed sort of these characters had been developed for many years before you put them on film through your artwork. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I started out as a painting major and originally was not aiming towards animation, and didn't really occur to me that I could be making art animation until seeing Jan Svankmeyer's Alice, which was changed everything. I mean, I was 19 at the time and highly impressionable, very excited by his work.
Yeah, the influence of Alice on your work is obviously quite significant. The use of stop motion, also the similar tone that you strike in your films is very similar to Schrankmeyer's films.
Yeah, and I just brought it into my own experience with brighter meadows and dry Northern California style grass, and just bringing it into the kind of the world that I know.
And so this may be a little well, first let's do a technical. Let's start with the technical questions, because if I'm not wrong, you did almost all the animation by yourself by hand. Is that correct?
Every frame, completely.
13 years of investment, yeah?
Well, if you put it in a little context, is it didn't really have a budget. So a lot of that 13 years was me working at my day job, just like waiting to get those little chunks of free time to work on the film. The actual animation part, like once most of it was built, was more like was it 4 years probably total. In 1 year, I managed to animate. I started probably 30 minutes worth of it in a year. So it's a lot of stops and starts, and starting when I had it like almost done, I started working in the animation industry in Los Angeles, and that was exciting and incredibly time consuming. So I learned a lot, and so things went even more slowly there. But then I met a lot of people that could kind of help me, that helped me get it to the finish line with the post production elements that I wasn't as experienced with.
What were some of the animation companies that you worked at during that time?
Most of my time was spent with Space Bass Films, and we worked on things for Mad TV, Oxygen Network. We did the opening sequence for Even Stevens. I don't know if you know from Disney Channel, Even Stevens. I don't know if this is this all a while ago. Couple commercials, things like that. I worked mostly for them. I did a couple of projects with Acme Filmworks, commercials that they're doing. And I worked for Bent Image Lab in Portland for a little while on just on a freelance basis, not fabrication.
But through that, you're able to support yourself and also support the making of the film, yeah?
Yeah, that and a credit card.
So you're a little bit like Crispin Glover, putting his own money from his films into his work in that regard.
Yeah, I think he has greater funds to supply to
Yeah.
his work, but yes, so just trying to live as frugally as possible and get this off the ground. The challenging part is that it was on 60 millimeter film, and the processing costs are greater. It is in my new work. I'm working in DSLR digital filming, photographic with Dragon Frame. If anybody knows what Dragon Frame is, it's taking a digital image from a DSLR camera, so it's as close to filming it as possible, and I don't try to mess with things with CG or any of those things.
Also, the resolution of the DSLR is significantly better than film, right? You're working, I think, with 8K now. Is that correct?
I'm working in it's actually ultra high def 4K, so it's just a little. It's a 16:9 aspect ratio, but it's considered the other 4K. Yeah, we don't want to think. The wider you get, the more set you have to make. So definitely, like it's created a difference where, like, Blood, Tea, and Red String feels. How do you describe it? It feels like the world, I think, feels kind of expansive, but there's this sort of contained nature of like little tableau kind of nature to it, where Seed in the Sand, my new work that is in progress, it's more cinematic. Like there's the environments having that extra space, and then just the environments, it just has a different feel to it. And I don't think it's necessarily related to what medium I'm using to create it, but maybe it has some impact. So it's a little set going on there.
It definitely sounds like a larger scope than Blood, Tea, and Red String.
Yep, definitely.
I would
And
go ahead. I would say if you were looking for a word to describe it, it's kind of diorama-like, sort of.
Yeah. Those dioramas that have like the more convincing paintings, like the Natural History Museum type of dioramas, big with a good painting in the background. Yeah, that makes more sense than the word tableau. I totally agree.
And with Blood, Tea, and Red String, you're actually working blind, weren't you? Like you didn't actually have like a monitor to check from frame to frame. You essentially just putting each frame in place on the film gauge without really knowing how smooth or how.
Yes. I mean, there's 2 minutes of the film that I shot with with a video camera side by side, which was it's not the last 2 minutes chronologically in the narrative, but the last 2 minutes that I shot, I was like, after I thought I was done with it, then there were a couple of years went through while I was like trying to get the sound done, and then I realized it needed a new beginning and a new end and a new ending, because I kept getting new beginnings that starting in different places. So the original beginning was the putting of the egg in the doll, and then how many years later? Like 3 years later, I guess. Then the new beginning was the creek, when they find the egg. And then I was like, no, that is not enough of it's not enough of a beginning. And well, that was the final animated beginning. No, wait. And then I had to, then the third sorry, I'm getting all like tangled up. And then the third beginning was the mice coming to request the making of the doll. So as I became a more sophisticated in storytelling, I started to realize certain, I won't say deficits, but certain things were like, oh, I want to do that a little differently. And then finally, then the live action beginning was added, because I'm like, how would I put this into play? I don't know if I can really verbalize why the live action beginning became necessary. It just, a lot of the way I work is I things gonna come to me and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do that. And I don't over edit myself. I like, okay, that's what I need to do. And I just trust my instinct and my inspiration. Because the moment you start to distrust your inspiration, your work becomes more watered down, and I don't know, you're trying to please someone else. I don't know, but like, I just trust it, and it tends to make my narratives more challenging for people to understand sometimes. But I think it's a challenge that's worthwhile. So yeah, I forgot where we were going with this.
Is the meaning deeply personal to you? How much of it is, connected to emotions, feelings, things that are specific, like personal to you, versus more like archetypal storytelling?
I missed the very first word you said. It sounded like naming. Is the what? This
How much of your work is personal to
all
you?
of it.
Yeah.
All of it is. I mean, I have always done a lot of research into various things, like, I've had my uh, Joseph Campbell times of been really obsessed with that, and fascinating trails through historical things and fairy tales. It's like I fill myself up with those sorts of influences, but I don't decide, oh, I'm going to use these influences and that. It's it all, when I get ready to make my own work, it's based on what comes to me. So maybe I'm drawing, maybe I'm just thinking, maybe I'm on a road trip, all of a sudden ideas just come to me. Like I just made some major revisions in Seed in the Sand, and I have two co-producers now who are been a wonderful addition to. I just because I have worked alone doesn't mean I always want to work alone. So I'm still doing the animation all by myself right now, but they brought this sort of energy of you could call it accountability, perhaps, where they the discussion started like, well, you say that this is what you're going for, right? And then you have this and this, and you're not communicating what you're saying you want to communicate. At no point, that's why they're such great collaborators, at no point do they say, oh, well, and you should do this to fix it. They're just like, we don't really see what it is that you're saying that it's there. So, and they kind of leave it at that. And then first I'm just like, oh, but don't you can't, can you not see it? And then I let it percolate in my head, and then I get, it feels almost like a physical like impact when I get that idea. I'm just like, oh, they're totally right, and I have and I know exactly how to fix it, and I fix it. So that's the kind of, so then in turn, when I'm like trying to help other people, or give other people feedback, I try to remember that feeling, where I never tell people what they're supposed to do when you're critiquing them. You just tell them that, find out what it is they're trying to say, and can let them know if you get it or not. But anyway, everything, it's not, I wouldn't say it's autobiographical, but it's all very personal.
Mm.
If that, sorry, to go back to, I'm very tangential, as you probably have already noticed.
Talking about influences, I'm just curious if you're inspired by surrealist female artists like Leonora Carrington.
Oh, yes, incredibly.
Yeah.
Especially like not as much for Blood Teen Midstream because I wasn't as aware of her at that time, but I'm definitely then inspired. I don't like that. I don't like go towards it and go, I'm going to make this now. That's just like hers. But then I see this resonance where it's like the same similar feeling that I get when I look at her work, and I feel.
Sorry.
Oh, what? And I didn't see what you're.
Something with my phone. Apologies for that.
Oh, it got edited out by the program. But yeah, but I definitely feel oh gosh, I just have the most horrible recall for names. You know, Japanese polka dots. Cute.
Female artist.
Yes, extremely famous, popular. But I'm just like completely blanking out on her. Courage.
But yeah, she works with distinctive patterns in her work
Yeah,
and strange sort of amorphous
yeah,
forms.
yeah.
I
So
can't think of her name either, but I think I know who you're talking about. Yes.
so it just, yeah, I just have to look it up. But anyway, so she had those little striped little things in the mirror room back. I guess it probably happened in the late 70s. But when I saw that imagery back when I was like 19 or 20, I was just like, oh my God, what is this? This is amazing. Like I don't resonate as much with her work now. It, you know, it's amazing, but it doesn't hit me in the same, me particularly in the same way. But when I was painting, I kind of the doll thing, you know, has been following me for a long time. But I had kind of whittled down the doll to this sort of a pod, which is actually it's fairly similar to these. But you know, I was in college, and you know, I did probably drink more beer than was healthy for me at the time. But so I ended up having this like, yeah. But I had this pod. It was much larger, and it had this like red and white striped like long tube that then went to this beer bottle that I attached with like this drippy black wax. It was very, very dramatic. So he's been a bit dramatic. And so this I don't know, this sort of like it's still kind of the doll body, but it's just sort of whittled down to sort of just a thing. And
What is the significance of dolls for you?
that's the question. Yeah, it's challenging to find. I have some different, yeah, depending on what day you ask me, there's the different answers. But it kind of epitomizes that feeling of, you know, you're putting on a face for the people in your life that don't really want to see you necessarily, or you're trying to satisfy the desires or the needs of someone else, and in a sort of helpless, not present kind of a way. I guess that's kind of one way you might approach it.
So the idea of persona and lack of agency.
A little bit, and then when you think of like going away from just sort of a personal meaning, it sort of you know, female in general, female issues in general of you know, powerlessness. Like in my latest art show, I have, you know, it's the same dolls, but they're hung from power poles, and it's they're in a way they're like, though I see the five with the power poles all connected, is that their power, they're generating power. But if I start going too far into like the resonances and the meanings, then I sort of sound like a mad woman. But
Most
so
artists do.
yeah, I know. But it's balancing power and powerlessness. I mean, because you think of image is also tremendously powerful, of what your persona and what you project to the world. So it kind of, but it can hide or display, and it really depends on what day you're projecting, I guess.
Uh, along those, sorry, Greg. Yep. Do you
I
want to?
just wanted to, so we don't run out of time. If we can pivot to the new work, it's Seed in the Sand, correct?
Yes.
You had some things to show us from that, I believe, potentially.
Oh yeah. So oh, maybe on your blog you could just like link to the trailer too, maybe. So we don't like we're not show it here, but like
Okay, we will have lots of
like
links.
links to
I
goodies.
know that you have on YouTube, you've placed several previews of this new work. And so I guess a couple of questions that are just more administrative are how close to being completed do you think you are? What are you looking for to complete it? And is it connected, and how connected to Blood Tea and Red String is it?
Okay, well, as far as I know now, there are 54 minutes completed. There's a little less because I'm redoing some things based on some really amazing critique. But and all the completed footage and all of the storyboards right now are in a they're all there. There's like 90 minutes. So that's, and when I do the storyboards, they're not exactly timed because it's stop motion and you just can't exactly time them. So I'm over halfway finished with it. I'm getting to the end of the things that I can comfortably do by myself in my I'm in my living room right now. I've taken over the living room of the house. The functional living room is actually like one of the bedrooms over there, like a TV den. But this is kind of, I'm just working on the last few things I can work on. So I'm trying to raise like 1.5 million to be able to have an actual crew to help me build some very large sets, and also there are live action portions throughout the movie that need to be created, and I would prefer to do them with the right budget and good small independent film budget, but still a budget to have like a crew and not I filmed some things in my garage at the family farm, and that it worked out really well, but there's grander and larger things that need to be done. So there's just like everything left is huge. And huge. I need like assistant animators. You can find a way to do everything in your house, in your living room. So I would inspire others to go ahead and try. But if I don't have to, the film will be much more. I forget all the
Will
rest
you
of the
feature? Will you feature in those live action sequences again? I think like you did in Blood Tea and.
Yeah, I have well, it's not on here. We've shot a few of the ones that were, or some kind of smaller ones that we're able to shoot in a smaller space. So I have a mask, but this mask is made from a life cast. So it's my actual face. It's a little wider than my actual face because there's a life cast, and then it's like that kind of plasticky stuff has been like vacuum cast around the life cast. So it's actually me. So yeah, I'll be acting I mean, it's to no voice. This is also a dialogue-free, a dialogue-free film, but I do have voice actors. So Susie Gardner of the band L7 is the voice of the antlered ones, and I'll show you a little clip of her voice. And Chaton Damone, most well known for her time with Christian Death, the kind of goth rock band. If it seems like people either know who Susie is or they know who Chaton is, they're different genre of music. But Chaton has done an amazing voice of a sea monster. So there's this fairly dangerous sea monster in Seed in the Sand, and she has sung the song for that. I actually have a little voice clip of that too. And then my composer slash co-producer slash musician voice artist does the voices of the of the nest dwellers. I know my names are not really they're original. It's like nest dwellers, oak dwellers. They're just all, they're not very functional. It sounds different when they say it because they have a different language. But she actually was trained to whistle like a bird by her father when she was little. Her name is Carrie Jacobson. I realize I didn't give her name. So she actually whistles all of the voices for these 6 characters and whistles their songs. And I can show you a little clip of that as well if you want to have a taste of all the sounds. And there were more questions, and when I tend to forget the last ones when I've answered the first ones.
That's okay. I'll tell you what, if you can show us some clips, maybe we'll do it after we finish the discussion.
You can like edit it and
Yeah, so we won't interrupt this, but I guess the second part of my question was what is the relationship between this one and Blood Tea?
When I first started it, I was thinking of it as sort of a trilogy where only the trilogy would have been the live action portions. But as I've been working on it, I've been working on it now. I mean, I'm at first conceived of it. If you don't count all the sketches of the characters before I realized they were the characters in the movie, and I first conceived of it in 2007, and then production started in full when I raised some money on Kickstarter in 2011. So I have been working on this for quite a while, and as I grow as an artist, always, I realized this is really not part of a trilogy. This is its own film. So thanks to the forever nature of the internet now, there are some things that are permanently out there that says it's a part of a trilogy, but I have changed. I have pivoted on that. It is not. It is in some ways a trilogy in that it is, the next thing that has sprung out of my mind, and it is again very personal. So you could see it that way. And considering that if I am successful in raising the adequate funding, I can be done with it in maybe a year and a half. If I work as I am now, it will probably take me at least 9 or 10 years to finish it. So we are working to make the right connections to make this
Have
happen.
you, given the long gestation periods of your films, have you ever thought about doing a collaboration with Anna Biller, who's the director of The Love Witch? It took her 7 years to get her film together. So I was just thinking perhaps
I really enjoy The Love Witch because I have kind of a soft spot for those sort of that era that she is recalling with her work. I really love kind of 70s B movie kind of things. I guess it kind of spans the 60s to the early 80s, but I do have a soft spot for that, and I do love her. But it never occurred to me to collaborate. I think when I finish Seed in the Sand, maybe it would be really fun to collaborate with some people and maybe be directing, just directing like, I want you to do this, and we have like great meetings and like go forth and create, and like be the magician making everything happen from the puppet master with the strings. But we'll see. I don't tend to collaborate because I have enough plans for projects of my own that would fill more than one lifetime. So I wouldn't necessarily turn down opportunities.
Sorry. Do you prefer the more auteur stamp, like Orson Welles? You want to be writer, director, producer? Do you prefer to have that level of control? And
well, when it's a passion project, yes. I don't feel that I would necessarily need to have that on everything. I love working on a team. So I've worked in production for many, many years, and it's just, it depends on the connection to the project, I'm a team player. But if it's mine, it's mine.
That I got to say, that idea of a Cegavske Biller double team, that would be insane.
All right.
it's not bad. It would be a very interesting collaboration. Very interesting.
Well, I don't know. We got to get her people and my people talking. let's, let's get seed in the sand done first. Yeah. But no, it hadn't occurred to me. But now I can just see it.
Um, anybody else that is an influence, perhaps that we haven't come up? There's one person I'm thinking of actually that could be an influence simply on some of your visual motifs. And that is Tim Burton, because I see the black, white, red color scheme and the stripes and some of the long things. Am I off there, or is that
As much as I enjoy a Tim Burton movie, or sometimes more technically a Henry Selick movie, I would not necessarily call them direct influences. When Nightmare Before Christmas came out, after my primary plan for Blood Tea was already well underway, but I'd say like colleague, like inspiration for sure of that. Yay, animation art form. Let's get this done. I mean, Beetlejuice. I really identified with Lydia. I mean,
Of course you did.
how could I not? So yeah, I mean, those. It's hard to say. I mean, I wouldn't consider them a direct influence, but I can't. They're part of the stew that has influenced me for sure. It's like when
I
I
was
think
going to ask.
I would say Burton, I would think more the live action movies, especially the 80s classic with Winona Ryder in them. Love those. What were you going to ask?
I was going to ask, has David Lynch been an influence on you? I mean, his paintings sometimes feed into his work. And I think you work in a similar way. Your paintings and your films kind of overlap in some ways.
I think he's been definitely a huge inspiration, and I love his work. I'm not sure I could really pick out like, oh, this is an exact influence on the work, but just something about his stamp is on even his stuff that really kind of managed to puncture into the mainstream, that it's still his stamp, and it feels very auteur artist. It feels like he managed to make all these things and retain and stay really true to himself. So I'd say that is incredibly inspirational, to have to stay true to his artistry while also becoming well known and being successful, and having his projects produced.
Yeah, millions of dollars at his disposal. Yes.
But yeah, he is an amazing individual, and I do quite love him. So. But that's the thing. It's like I don't always necessarily recognize what has influenced me until later, or someone points it out, because I don't. As I'm working, like I know I've kind of gathered all this just knowledge and experience through my life, and it just comes to me as if it's just I'm almost the puppet of the inspiration. So it does tend to take other people to point out sometimes the threads that they notice.
We have about 5 minutes. I don't know. Do you want to try to show a clip, or do you want to maybe pause and come back and show something?
Oh, is it 5 minutes of the?
Left
Well,
of the
it's up
recording.
to you. However, we could just we could come back and just do a little clip reel.
Why don't we do that? But we'll sort of wrap up. We have a traditional final question that my partner Giles Edwards started asking, and we've asked everyone, so we'll ask it here too. It sometimes puts people on the spot and they can't think of anything. So if you can't, that's fine. The question is, what is your hometown and can you recommend a restaurant there?
Oh, geez. So hometown meaning where I grew up as a child.
However you interpret it, where you live now or where you grew up.
Oh, geez, neither. And what feels like home? Oh my God. Just like I'm going to have an existential crisis right now. I escaped my hometown as soon as possible. I graduated high school early to start, but as an adopted hometown, I feel the most at home in Los Angeles. Though yeah, it's my adopted hometown because I moved there fully as an adult. um, but favorite restaurant, actually discovered it a few years ago, and I've never actually been to the restaurant because I ordered it when we were working on the sound with Susie. And Daisy Mint makes amazing, it's kind of pan Asian kind of food. So I'll just say that because there in where I grew up, Roseburg, Oregon, there is a pretty nice little Japanese place that will make a sushi burrito the size of your head, I think, practically. And
Wow.
that is good. So the technical hometown of Roseburg, Oregon is, but I can't remember the name of it. It's like a sushi place in downtown.
Well, that's cool. What was the Daisy Mint? Did I?
Daisy Mint, that's what I heard, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. But like I said, I've never been to the actual restaurant. I've just ordered DoorDash from it.
All right. So we weren't expecting clips, but I found out that there are some available. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause, let you set those up, and then come back real quick for a real final, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna go to a different room and connect to the TV so I can curate those. So we'll maybe not. I'm gonna have my camera off because that room is, well, I guess there's a painting behind. Would be a painting you could look at. I don't know. It just hasn't been curated properly.